The job came through the standard board. Hull patch, berth 14, Verith Station outer ring, a mid-hull freighter called the Calvin Drift, routine work. 3 cracked seams along the port underbelly, stress fractures from a hard transit through the Kerith relay. I'd fixed 100 ships like it. I quoted them 4 hours, loaded my kit, and walked up the ramp without thinking twice about it. I found her in the second maintenance crawl space. Not right away. I had to pull back the access panel to reach the second seam, and she was just there, into the back corner with her knees drawn up, watching me with eyes the color of old amber. Lavender skin, small, the way only very young things are small. Not just short but fragile through the chest and wrists, as if she'd been built out of something lighter than bone. She had a water ration sitting beside her. One. The kind that lasts about 18 hours. She didn't make a sound. I looked at her for a moment. Then I looked at the water ration. Then I did the math on how long a one-way freight run from Kerith to Verith Station took. 26 hours, I said. Hey, I'm just fixing the wall. I'm not going to touch you. She didn't answer. But she didn't move further back either. I fixed the wall. I took twice as long as I needed to. When I was done with the second seam, I sat back on my heels and said, "Are you hungry?" And she looked at me with those amber eyes and said, very quietly, in trade standard with an accent I couldn't place, "They said not to make noise." I set my patch tool down on the deck. "Who said that?" She didn't answer. But she glanced up toward the ship above us. Toward the crew. I have a rule. It's the only rule I've ever needed in 20 years of freelance hull work. Do the job, take the credit, go home. I am not an enforcer. I am not a peacekeeper. I have no badge, no weapon, no authority that extends past the hull of whatever ship I'm currently under. I am a man with a torch, a patch kit, and a certification that lets me sign off on pressure integrity. I thought about that rule for about 4 seconds. Then I pulled my comm off my belt and sent a single flag to Verith Station Port Authority. A distress call. I wasn't sure yet what I had, and a false distress call carries its own penalties. Just an inspection hold, routine language. Hull certification incomplete, berth 14 Calvin Drift, holding pending sign-off. It was the most boring message I'd ever sent in my life. Then I reached over and manually locked the crawl space access panel from the inside. The captain came down 11 minutes later. His name was Osa Ven, and he was the kind of man who looked like he'd been compressed from something larger. Wide through the jaw, short through the neck, with hands that had done hard things for a long time. He crouched at the access panel and said, "Through the grate, done, sign off and go." "I'm not done," I said. "I've got the third seam to run. The third seam is fine. I don't sign off on fine. I sign off on certified." A pause, mechanic, the panel is locked, emergency protocol, pressure variance reading on my gauge. I've got to run the full sequence before I can clear it. I held up my gauge. I'd adjusted the calibration setting by hand. Trick every hull tech knows, and nobody outside the guild would recognize. The number on the face was meaningless, but it looked authoritative. Probably another 2 hours. He looked at me through the grate. He knew. I could see it in the way his eyes didn't move. He knew I knew, and we both. Nothing he could do about it without making it very obvious that there was something here he didn't want a poor inspector to find. 2 hours, he said. Could be 3, I said. Depends on the seam. He left. I turned back to the child. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Not hope, exactly. More like a person who had stopped expecting things and was waiting to be surprised or not. I had a ration bar in my kit. I held it out to her. She looked at it for a long time before she took it. "What's your name?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Sivi, I'm Marrow. Fix ships." I started on the third seam, the real one this time, because the work would keep my hands from shaking. "How long have you been in here, Sivi?" "Since Kerith," she said. Kerith, 2 transit stops back. The water ration had been calculated, just close enough to right that you couldn't call it a mistake. Someone had thought about how much she needed. Someone had put exactly that much in. No more. I worked. She ate the ration bar in careful small bites. After a while she asked what I was doing, and I explained it to her. The patch process, the pressure test, why hull seams fail, how you find the stress fracture by running the torch at a low angle along the plating. She listened. Kids in bad situations will sometimes do that. I've noticed. Latch onto something ordinary and hold it like a rope. Around the 90-minute mark, the captain came back. He had 2 crew with him this time. "Open it," he said. "Still reading variants," I said. "Open the panel, mechanic. Last time I say it." I turned to look at him, through the grate. He had the kind of certainty that men get when they're used to being the largest thing in a room. I thought about Safi behind me, sitting in the corner, holding the wrapper from the ration bar like it was something worth keeping. "I've got an inspection hold on this berth," I said. "Port Authority flag. You move this ship before I sign off. You're looking at a full cargo audit, a hull impound, and whatever they find when they go through your manifest." I paused. "You want to open this panel, you can. It's just a lock. The inspector is already docked. I can see her run lights onto my panel from in here. And she's going to want to know why the certification was interrupted." He was very still. "Your call," I said. "He left." CV said quietly behind me. "Are they going to come back?" "Not before she gets here," I said. "The inspector." "What happens then?" I started on the pressure test sequence. "Real this time. Then you walk off this ship," I said, "and so do I." She was quiet. Then she said, "With you?" The torch hummed. The gauge climbed toward green. "If you want," I said. The inspector's name was Tola Marsh. She was a compact woman with a Port Authority badge and the particular expression of someone who has seen a great many things she was not supposed to see and has learned to keep her voice flat while she processes them. She came through the berth access 17 minutes later. By the time she reached us, the captain had already retreated to the bridge and his crew had followed. Tola looked at me. She looked at Sevi. She looked at the single water ration, still sitting on the deck where I'd left it. She didn't ask me many questions. She asked Sevi a few, very gently, crouched down to her level, and Sevi answered them in that same careful, quiet way she had. Like someone who had learned to spend words carefully because there was a penalty for using too many. The manifest listed her as a biological specimen, Category 4 Sulhari origin. That was the language. Category 4. Tola sealed the berth. The Calvin Drift didn't leave Vareth Station for 11 days, and when it left it was without its captain, and with 2 fewer crew than it arrived with. I didn't follow the case closely. That wasn't my part of it. My part was walking out of that berth, with Sevi's hand around 2 fingers of mine. She was too small to hold the whole hand, and taking her to the station medical bay and sitting in the waiting area for 4 hours, while they checked her over, and then filling out the temporary guardian forms that Tola brought me, and then taking her to my rack at the station hostel, and giving her the bunk by the wall because she moved toward walls the way some creatures move toward warmth. She slept for 14 hours. I sat in the chair by the door and did not sleep at all. That was 9 years ago. I'm still freelance. Still hull work, mostly the outer freight runs. Kareth relay and out. I kept the temporary guardianship until it became something more permanent, and then I kept that. Sevi is not small anymore. She came to find me at berth 14, Vareth Station, on a Wednesday 3 weeks ago. I was under a mid-haul freighter, same as always, in hand. And she crouched down at the access panel the way Tola Marsh had crouched years before, and she said she'd just passed her Port Authority certification, Inspector Track. She said she wanted me to know. I finished the seam I was on. Then I sat back and looked at her. "Good," I said. She smiled. It was a real one. I handed her the torch and showed her how to check the angle for stress fractures, because she'd asked me once before and I'd never finished the lesson. And she held it the right way on the first try. Some things take a long time to fix. Some things, if you're patient, fix themselves. I signed off on the hull. We walked out together.